The morning sun cast long shadows across the red dust of New Terran Colony's outer perimeter when Maya Chen first heard the sound that would change everything. She had been checking the moisture collectors along the eastern boundary, her daily routine since arriving on this arid planet 6 months ago. The recycled air from her environment suit tasted stale, but she preferred the solitude of the boundary work to the crowded corridors of the main settlement. The sound came again, a low, keening wail that seemed to carry centuries of pain within its notes. Maya stopped, her hand frozen on the moisture reading display. In all her time on New Terran, she had encountered the usual desert wildlife, the scuttling crystal beetles, the occasional sand serpent, and the peculiar floating jellyfish-like creatures that drifted on the planet's thermal currents. But this sound was different. It carried intelligence, purpose, and something that made her heart ache in recognition, desperation. Following the sound, Maya crested a small ridge of purple stone formations that characterized this region of the planet. Below her, in a natural depression that had once been a lake millions of years ago, she saw something that made her breath catch in her throat. A creature the size of a terrestrial wolf lay sprawled on the ancient lakebed. But this was no earthly animal. Its fur appeared to shimmer between silver and deep blue, and even from her elevated position, Maya could see that it possessed 6 legs, each ending in what looked like crystalline claws. Most striking were the creature's eyes, large, multifaceted like cut gems, and currently fixed directly on her with an intelligence that was unmistakably sentient. The creature raised its massive head and released another of those haunting wails. This time, Maya understood with shocking clarity that it was not just a sound of distress, it was a plea. The universal translator in her suit began processing the vocalizations, and within moments, words began forming in her earpiece. Water. The creature's voice was like wind through ancient canyons, rough and weathered by time. Please, small, warm one, water. Maya's hands trembled as she activated her suit's recording function. First contact protocols demanded that all interactions with potentially intelligent alien life be documented. But something about this encounter felt too intimate for official channels. She made her way down the rocky slope, each step deliberate and slow, keeping her hands visible and her movements non-threatening. As she drew closer, the full impact of the creature's condition became apparent. Its magnificent fur was patched with bare spots where the skin showed through, cracked and gray. The creature's 6 legs were painfully thin, and its massive frame seemed hollow, as if whatever magnificent being this had once been was now just a shadow wearing its own skin. Water, the creature repeated, its crystalline eyes tracking her every movement. Have searched, have traveled. Stars have turned in their courses, and still, I search for water. Maya knelt at what she judged to be a safe distance, though every instinct told her this being posed no threat to her. It was dying. Had perhaps been dying for longer than she could comprehend. She activated her suit's external speakers, so the creature could hear her without translation delays. I'm Maya, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. What are you? How long have you been searching? The creature's great head lifted with what seemed like tremendous effort. When it spoke, its words came slowly, as if each syllable required careful conservation of energy. I am Kethtar of the Wandering Fleet. I have searched for 347 of your years, small Maya. My people. My people are gone from lack of water. I am the last. The weight of that statement hit Maya like a physical blow. 347 years. This creature had been searching for water for longer than humans had been spacefaring. The implications staggered her. Your people, she said carefully. What happened to them? Kethtar's eyes closed, and for a moment Maya feared he had died. Then those magnificent orbs opened again, reflecting the red sun above them like prisms. We were travelers, Kethtar said, his voice carrying the weight of memory. Our ships could cross the void between stars, but we were always dependent on the gifts of worlds we found. Water was life to us, as it is to all beings. But the galaxy grew dry in our region of space. Planets died, suns consumed their children. One by one, the water sources we had relied upon for generations disappeared. Maya found herself leaning forward, captivated despite the tragedy unfolding before her. Our science was great in many ways, Kethtar continued. We could traverse distances that smaller species thought impossible. We could communicate across light years, without delay. But we never learned to create water from nothing. We never learned to make life from death, moisture from dryness. We could only find, never make. The alien's words struck Maya oddly. Humans had been creating water for generations, breaking down compounds, extracting it from apparently barren sources, even synthesizing it from base elements when necessary. It was such a fundamental part of human technology that she had never considered it might be unusual. Our fleet grew smaller as ships failed, as crews died of thirst despite the vast waters of space itself, mocking us with its frozen state. The ice between stars might as well have been stone for all our ability to harvest it while traveling. Our ships were not designed for such desperate measures. Kethtar shifted slightly, and Maya could hear the creature's labored breathing even through her suit's audio filters. I alone was chosen to continue the search, the last scout of a dead civilization. For 3 centuries, I have traveled from system to system, world to world, seeking not just water for myself, but hoping to find enough to somehow return and save what might remain of my people. But with each passing year, that hope grows dimmer, like a star dying in the cold between worlds. Maya's mind raced. The moisture collectors she maintained were designed to extract water from seemingly dry air, pulling humidity from the atmosphere and condensing it into usable liquid. The technology was so commonplace in human space that every settlement, every ship, every habitat had multiple redundant systems for water production. Kethtar, she said slowly, how much water would your people need? The alien's head tilted in what she interpreted as confusion. Need? Small, Maya? Need is the wrong word. My people need resurrection from death. They need time to flow backward and mistakes to be undone. What little of my people might yet live would need oceans to recover, rivers to restore their strength. It is a dream beyond possibility. How much exactly? Maya pressed. In measurement. How much water? Kethtar was silent for a long moment, his crystalline eyes studying her with what seemed like new interest. If any of my people live still, they would be in the deep sleep of the dying. Perhaps 300 individuals in the most optimistic possibility. Each would need. Kethtar paused, apparently calculating. In your measurements, perhaps 50,000 liters each to return to health, and then continuing supplies for life. But this is dreams, small Maya. Such quantities exist only in the legends of water-rich worlds, and those are rare as gems in the void. Maya did quick mental calculations. 15 million liters to revive the survivors. Then ongoing consumption. For a human colony like New Terran, with its water production facilities, that was a significant, but entirely manageable amount. The industrial water processors back at the main settlement could produce that much in a few weeks of dedicated operation. But this revelation raised larger questions. If an entire spacefaring civilization could die from lack of water while humans treated it as a basic utility, what did that say about humanity's place in the galaxy? Maya had always assumed that any species capable of interstellar travel would have mastered basic resource production. Kethtar, she said carefully, where are your people now? The ones who might still live? Far, the alien replied. Many jumps through the void, hidden in the shadow of a dead star, in ships that barely maintain life support. I left them decades ago for this final search. They may already be gone to the great dark. Maya stood, her mind made up. Can you travel? Can you return to them? Kethtar's laugh was like wind through broken glass. Travel? Small Maya. I have not had sufficient water to power my biosystems for weeks. I came to this world because my sensors detected moisture. Your machines? Perhaps, but I lack the strength to return to my ship, much less travel the void. Maya looked back toward the settlement, then down at Kethtar. The alien had laid his great head back on the ancient lake bed, resigned to death in the place where water had once flowed. What if, Maya said, her voice growing stronger with conviction. What if I told you that humans can make water? That we create it from nothing? Extract it from air? Synthesize it from base elements? What if I told you that the amount your people need is not a dream, but a simple engineering problem? Kethtar's eyes snapped open, focusing on her with sudden intensity that was almost alarming. Impossible, he whispered. No species has such power. Maya smiled, feeling for the first time the strange pride that came with being human, a pride she had never needed to feel among her own species. Kethtar, you're about to learn something important about humanity. We don't just find resources, we make them. She activated her suit's communication system, opening a channel to the new Terran settlement. Maya to base, she said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to set in motion. I need an immediate emergency water delivery to my position, 50 liters, suitable for alien biochemistry if possible. And I need to speak with Administrator Carson as soon as possible. Maya, this is base. Confirm you said alien biochemistry? Are you injured? Do you require medical evacuation? Maya looked down at Kethtar, who was watching her with an expression she was beginning to read as wonder. Negative on medical evacuation for me, she replied. But I'm going to need a xenobiology team, a diplomatic specialist, and probably someone from engineering. We have a situation that's about to become very interesting. As she waited for the response, Maya knelt beside Kethtar again. The alien's breathing had grown more labored, and she could see that even this conversation had taxed his remaining strength. Hold on, she told him simply. Help is coming. Real help. Kethtar's crystalline eyes reflected the red sun above them, but now they seemed to hold something Maya hadn't seen in them before: hope. Small Maya, he whispered. If your people can truly do what you claim, then you are not like any species I have encountered in 3 centuries of searching. What manner of beings are humans, that they can create what nature withholds? Maya smiled, thinking of the vast terraforming projects humanity had undertaken. The dead worlds brought to life. The space habitats that sustained millions in the void. The atmospheric processors that could make paradise from wasteland. We're the kind of beings who don't accept that things are impossible, she replied. We're the kind who, when we encounter a problem like yours, don't see tragedy. We see a project. In the distance, Maya could hear the approaching sound of a hover transport. Soon, Kethtar would taste water for the first time in who knew how long. But more than that, he would be the first member of his species to encounter humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy, the refusal to accept that anything was truly beyond remedy. As the transport grew closer, Maya realized that this moment would mark not just the salvation of one dying alien, but potentially the first step in humanity's emergence as something greater in the galactic community. They had always been explorers, colonizers, survivors, but perhaps their true role was something more fundamental. They were the fixers, the ones who made the impossible merely difficult, and the difficult routine. Kethtar's people had wandered for centuries seeking water. They were about to discover that they had found something far more valuable: humans. And humans, Maya reflected with growing excitement, were very good at solving problems that other species considered unsolvable. The transport was almost overhead now, carrying the first installment of what would likely become a much larger undertaking. Maya stood and waved to the pilot, then looked back down at Kethtar. This is just the beginning, she told him. Wait until you see what we can really do. The hover transport settled onto the ancient lakebed with a soft hiss of displaced air, kicking up small clouds of red dust that sparkled in the alien sunlight. Maya watched as the cargo bay opened, and 3 figures emerged, led by Dr. Sarah Okafor, the settlement's chief medical officer. Behind her came engineering specialist James Wright, and, to Maya's surprise, Administrator Carson herself. What drew Maya's immediate attention, however, was the large container Wright was maneuvering out of the transport, not the 50 liters she had requested, but what appeared to be a full atmospheric water generation unit, the kind used to establish new colonies. When you said 50 liters for alien biochemistry, Administrator Carson called out as she approached. Right here convinced me we might need to think bigger. The administrator was a stern woman in her 60s who had personally overseen the establishment of 12 successful colonies. She stopped short when she saw Kethtar, her experienced eyes taking in the alien's condition with immediate understanding. Dr. Okafor reached them first, medical scanner already in hand. Maya, I need you to explain what we're looking at here. The alien's biochemistry appears to be primarily water-based. But there are some fascinating variations in cellular structure that I've never... She stopped mid-sentence as Kethtar's eyes opened and focused on the newcomers. The alien's voice, when it came, was barely a whisper through the universal translator. More warm ones. Do they also possess the power to create water from emptiness? Administrator Carson looked at Maya with raised eyebrows. Create water from emptiness? Maya quickly briefed the team on what she had learned the centuries of searching, the dying civilization, the failure of an entire spacefaring species to master what humans considered basic technology. As she spoke, Wright was already assembling the water generation unit, his movements efficient and practiced. 15 million liters to revive his people, Carson repeated thoughtfully. Plus ongoing consumption for 300 individuals. She was quiet for a moment, running calculations. Right? What's our production capacity if we retask the industrial units? If we focus the main atmospheric processors and the 3 backup units specifically on water production, we could hit that number in about 18 days, Wright replied without looking up from his work. That's assuming we want to maximize output rather than maintain our usual surplus margins. Dr. Okafor looked up from her scanner readings. This is remarkable. His cellular structure is actually more efficient than human biochemistry in terms of water retention, but their technology never developed hydrolysis or atmospheric extraction. It's as if they evolved to be perfect water conservationists, but never needed to learn water creation. Kethtar was listening to this exchange with growing amazement. 18 days, he repeated. You speak of producing the dreams of my people in 18 days. Administrator Carson knelt beside the alien, her manner shifting to the diplomatic tone that had served her well in negotiations with various human factions. Kethtar, I need you to understand something about humanity. We don't just solve problems, we tend to solve them completely. 15 million liters is not a dream to us. It's a production schedule. Wright's water generation unit hummed to life, immediately beginning to extract moisture from New Terran's arid atmosphere. Within minutes, the first trickle of pure, distilled water began flowing into the collection chamber. But before we commit to full production, Carson continued, I need to know more about your people's situation. Are they truly still alive? How long can they survive in their current state? And how do we get this water to them? Kethtar's eyes were fixed on the water unit with fascination that bordered on reverence. My people enter deep stasis when water becomes scarce. They can survive for many years in this state, but each day weakens them further. As for reaching them, his voice trailed off uncertainly. How fast is your ship? Maya asked. How long would it take you to return to them? My ship is damaged, Kethtar admitted. Even if I had sufficient water to restore my strength, the journey would take months. My people may not have months remaining. Dr. Okafor looked up from her medical readings. Actually, that might not be the limiting factor. Kethtar, your physiology is remarkable. If we can get sufficient water into your system, I believe you could be restored to full strength within days, not weeks. Wright stepped forward, holding a clear container of the fresh water his unit had produced. This is pure H2O, extracted from atmospheric moisture and filtered through our standard purification process. As clean as we can make it. Kethtar stared at the container as if it held liquid starlight. With trembling limbs, he accepted the water from Wright and began to drink. The effect was immediate and visible. Color began returning to his fur. The cracks in his exposed skin started to close, and his crystalline eyes became brighter and more focused. Impossible, he whispered after draining the container. In my lifetime, I have never tasted water so pure. Even the legendary spring worlds of ancient stories did not produce water like this. Administrator Carson and Dr. Okafor exchanged glances. Kethtar, Carson said carefully. This is standard water. We produce this quality automatically for all our settlements. It's not special by our standards. The alien stared at them in silence for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a note of awe that made them all uncomfortable. Your species treats as routine what mine has sought across the galaxy for centuries. What other powers do humans possess that they consider ordinary? Before anyone could answer, Wright spoke up from where he was monitoring the water production unit. Administrator, if speed is a factor, we might want to consider using the Churchill. Carson's eyes widened. The Churchill? James, that's a deep space exploration vessel. Not a cargo hauler, but it's the fastest ship in our fleet, Wright argued. If Keth Tar can guide us to his people's location, we could deliver water in weeks instead of months. The Churchill's cargo capacity could handle enough water for initial revival, and we could follow up with supply runs. Maya felt her pulse quicken. You're talking about a rescue mission. I'm talking about solving the problem completely. Wright replied with a grin. It's what we do. Dr. Okafor was studying her scanner readings again. There's something else we should consider. Keth Tar's species appears to have biological modifications that make them incredibly suited for deep space travel. Their radiation resistance alone is remarkable. If we could learn from their physiology, and I was Fortin, and I think it way too, and I would please way too, Dr. Okafor. Administrator Carson's voice carried a warning note. I'm not suggesting experimentation, Okafor clarified quickly. I'm suggesting collaboration. Keth Tar's people have mastered interstellar travel in ways we haven't. Their ships, their navigation systems, their ability to survive in deep space for centuries. Imagine what we could learn from each other. Keth Tar had been listening to this exchange with growing amazement. You speak of helping my people not for gain, but simply because they need help, and you offer collaboration, not conquest or submission. What manner of species are you? Maya smiled. We're the kind that believes that everyone should have access to clean water, and that problems exist to be solved, not endured. Administrator Carson was already activating her communication unit. Carson to New Terran Command. I need Captain Martinez and the crew of the Churchill to begin immediate preparation for a deep space humanitarian mission. Priority Alpha authorization. XPDH. To Martinez Ovation 7020. Administrator, came the response. Did you say humanitarian mission? For whom? For about 300 individuals who have been dying of thirst for longer than our species has been in space, Carson replied. Full details to follow. Wright's water production unit was now humming steadily, producing a steady stream of pure water. He handed another container to Keth Tar, who accepted it with something approaching wonder. While they're preparing the Churchill, Carson continued, we need to address immediate concerns. Keth Tar, how much water do you need to be fully restored, and how quickly can you guide us to your people? Keth Tar consumed the second container of water, and the transformation was remarkable. His fur regained its lustrous silver-blue color. His crystalline eyes became brilliant and clear, and his six-legged form filled out with renewed strength. I am already more restored than I have been in decades, he said, his voice now strong and clear. With perhaps one more day of proper hydration, I will be at full strength. As for guiding you to my people, I can provide exact coordinates and navigation data. Dr. Okafor looked up excitedly. The rate of his recovery is incredible. His cellular regeneration with water supplementation is far beyond human norms. Administrator, this species might hold keys to human adaptation for longer deep space missions. One thing at a time, Doctor, Carson replied, but Maya could see the wheels turning in the administrator's mind. The implications of contact with a species that had mastered interstellar travel for centuries were staggering. There's something I don't understand, Maya said. Keth Tar, your people have been spacefaring for centuries. Your technology must be incredibly advanced. How is it possible that you never developed water synthesis? Keth Tar was quiet for a moment, his crystalline eyes reflecting the activity around him. Our people evolved on a world rich in water. Our early technology focused on preservation and transportation of water, never creation. When we took to the stars, we became dependent on finding worlds and systems that could supply what we needed. We became very good at finding things, but we never learned to make them from nothing. But that's impossible. Wright interjected. Any species capable of interstellar travel would need to understand basic chemistry. Water synthesis from hydrogen and oxygen is fundamental. We understand the principle, Kethtar replied. But our technology evolved differently. Our ships are biological constructs, grown rather than built. Our power systems are based on principles your science might not recognize. We learned to cross the void between stars, but we never needed to break down and rebuild matter at the molecular level. Dr. Okafor's scanner was beeping excitedly. Biological ships? Kethtar, are you saying your spacecraft are alive? In a sense, yes. They grow, they adapt, they heal themselves. But they also require specific nutrients to function. Nutrients that include significant amounts of water. Our ships became as thirsty as we did when the water began to disappear. Administrator Carson was taking notes rapidly. We need to understand this technology. If your ships are biological, they might be able to integrate with our water production systems in ways we haven't considered. Wright was already thinking ahead. If we could retrofit his ship with our atmospheric water generators, create a hybrid system that feeds both the crew and the ship itself. You would do this? Kethtar asked, his voice filled with disbelief. You would modify your technology to save beings you have never met? Maya stood up, brushing dust from her suit. Kethtar, let me explain something about humans. We have a saying, no one fights alone. It means that when we encounter someone in trouble, helping them becomes our problem to solve. It's not charity or kindness, it's just how we're built. But surely there must be some cost. Kethtar protested. Some payment expected. In my centuries of travel, I have never encountered a species that offers aid without seeking advantage. Dr. Okafor looked up from her scanner. Well, there would be knowledge exchange. Your understanding of biological spacecraft technology, your navigation methods, your deep space survival techniques. Humanity could learn a great deal from your people. And your people, Administrator Carson added, would gain access to water production technology that could ensure you never face drought again. It's not payment, it's partnership, Wright's communication unit chimed. Right here. This is Captain Martinez from the Churchill. I understand we're mounting a rescue operation? What kind of timeline are we looking at? Wright looked at Administrator Carson, who nodded. Captain, we need the Churchill ready for deep space operations within 48 hours. We're going to be delivering approximately 50,000 liters of water to coordinates that our guest will provide, with potential for follow-up supply missions. 50,000 liters? That's going to require significant cargo modification. What's the destination? Self. Kethtar spoke up, his voice now strong and clear. Captain Martinez, the destination is a dying star system, approximately 67 light-years from your position. The journey will require passage through regions your species may consider dangerous. There was a pause. Did that alien just address me directly? And did he say 67 light-years? Affirmative on both counts, Captain, Carson replied. This is a first contact situation with humanitarian implications. We'll be doing a full mission briefing within the hour. Wright was grinning now. Captain, you're about to be part of the first human deep space rescue mission for an alien civilization. How often do you get to say that? Maya looked around at the activity surrounding them, the water production unit working steadily. Dr. Okafor, taking detailed scans of Kethtar, Administrator Carson coordinating what was rapidly becoming a major interstellar operation, and Wright already sketching modifications for biological spacecraft integration. 24 hours ago, she had been performing routine maintenance on moisture collectors. Now, she was watching humanity mobilize for its first major intervention in an interstellar humanitarian crisis. Kethtar followed her gaze, watching the humans work with the same fascination she had seen in his initial reaction to the water production. "Small Maya," he said quietly, "I begin to understand what you meant when you said humans are the kind who don't accept that things are impossible. Your people do not just solve problems, you transform them into opportunities." Maya nodded. "And your people, Kethtar, are about to discover that when humans decide to help, we don't do anything halfway. We're not just going to save your people, we're going to make sure they never have to search for water again." In the distance, she could see more hover transports approaching, bringing additional equipment and personnel. Humanity's first alien rescue mission was officially underway, and Maya had a feeling it was going to change everything, not just for Kethtar's people, but for humanity's role in the galaxy. The Churchill dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of a dead solar system. Its massive cargo holds filled with enough water to revive an entire civilization. Captain Elena Martinez stood on the bridge, watching the view screen display a sight that chilled her to the bone. The central star was a dying red dwarf, barely emanating enough heat and light to qualify as alive. Around it, the remains of what had once been planets drifted as lifeless rocks, their surfaces scarred by centuries of stellar decay. "There," Kethtar said from beside her, his six-legged form now fully restored and magnificent in the bridge lighting. His crystalline eyes reflected the dim red glow of the dying star. "The graveyard fleet lies in the shadow of the seventh planetoid." Dr. Okafor, who had insisted on joining the mission, was studying her readings with fascination. The radiation levels should be lethal to most organic life, but Kethtar shows no stress indicators whatsoever. "My people adapted long ago to survive in the harsh spaces between worlds," Kethtar explained. "It was necessary for our nomadic existence. But adaptation cannot create what does not exist. We could survive the radiation, but we could never survive without water." Maya, who had also joined the mission at Administrator Carson's insistence, peered at the view screen. "Where are the ships? I don't see anything." Kethtar made a sound that their translators interpreted as bitter amusement. "They are there, small Maya. But my people's ships do not shine with metal and artificial lights as yours do. Watch." He moved to the communication console and began inputting a complex series of signals. Within moments, the apparently empty space around the seventh planetoid began to shimmer, and shapes emerged from what Maya realized had been perfect camouflage. The ships that revealed themselves were unlike anything in human experience. They looked grown rather than built, with organic curves and surfaces that seemed to pulse with faint internal light. There were dozens of them, ranging from massive vessels the size of human dreadnoughts to smaller craft no bigger than shuttles. But all of them appeared dormant, their bioluminescent surfaces dim and flickering. "Biomechanical camouflage," Chief Engineer Wright breathed from his station. "They're nearly invisible to our sensors even when revealed." "How is that possible?" "Our ships are extensions of ourselves," Kethtar explained. "They share our ability to adapt, to hide, to survive in hostile environments. But like their creators, they are dying without water." Captain Martinez opened a communication channel. "This is Captain Martinez of the human vessel Churchill. We bring water and aid to the survivors of the wandering fleet." The response came in the form of weak signals from multiple ships, voices speaking in the same crystalline tones as Kethtar, but faded with weakness and disbelief. "Water? Did the scout say water? Kethtar lives? He has found water? Impossible. Water enough for revival?" Kethtar responded in his own language, his voice strong and clear after his restoration. The effect on the fleet was immediate. The bioluminescent pulses of the ships began to strengthen, and more voices joined the communication. Dr. Okafor was monitoring the exchanges with growing excitement. "Captain, I'm detecting increased biological activity throughout the fleet. They're beginning to wake up." "Right. How long to transfer our first batch of water?" Captain Martinez asked. "The engineering team has already deployed the transfer systems," Wright replied. "We can begin pumping within the hour." "But Captain, I'm seeing something interesting in the scans of their ships. The biological systems are incredibly sophisticated. If we could integrate our water production technology with their biomechanical systems, one thing at a time, James, Captain Martinez said, though she too was thinking about the implications. Maya watched in fascination as human engineering efficiency met alien desperation. Within 2 hours, massive water transfer conduits had been established between the Churchill and the largest of the alien vessels. Human technology, designed for rapid deployment and maximum efficiency, proved perfectly compatible with alien biomechanical systems that adapted to accept the life-giving flow. The first alien to emerge from stasis was a female of Kethtar's species, her silver-blue fur marked with intricate patterns that seemed to shift in the light. She moved with the characteristic six-legged grace of her people. But her crystalline eyes were fixed on the water transfer systems with an expression of pure wonder. "I am Vethara, speaker for the Deep Fleet," she said through the universal translator, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Kethtar speaks truth? The warm ones can create water from emptiness." Dr. Okafor stepped forward, her medical scanner already active. "Vethara, we're humans, and creating water is one of our basic technologies. We've brought enough water to revive your people and begin long-term restoration of your fleet." Vethara's eyes widened, literally growing larger as her pupils expanded. "Basic technology? You speak of the dreams of ages as basic technology?" More aliens were emerging from stasis now, dozens of them, all moving with increasing strength as their biomechanical ships drank deeply from the human water supplies. Their reactions were uniformly the same: wonder, disbelief, and growing amazement as they realized that salvation hadn't come from some miraculous discovery, but from creatures who treated their impossible dream as a simple engineering problem. Wright was working with a team of alien bioengineers, their communication a mixture of universal translation and rapid sketching of technical diagrams. "Captain, this is incredible. Their ships aren't just alive, they're adaptive ecosystems. If we integrate our water production systems into their biological matrices, we could create hybrid vessels that are essentially self-sustaining. And our navigation systems," Vethara added, approaching the group, "could be adapted to your vessels. Our people have mapped regions of space that your kind has never seen, developed methods of travel that avoid the most dangerous stellar phenomena." Captain Martinez was beginning to understand that this rescue mission was evolving into something much larger. "Are you proposing a formal alliance?" Kethtar and Vethara exchanged what Maya was learning to recognize as significant glances among their people. "Captain Martinez," Vethara said carefully, "in 3 centuries of wandering, we have encountered 47 different spacefaring species. Some were hostile, some indifferent, most simply unable to help even if they had wished to. You are the first we have met who treated our crisis not as our problem, but as a problem to be solved." Dr. Okafor looked up from her medical readings. "The revival rate is incredible. We're looking at full restoration of cognitive function within days rather than weeks. Captain, this species could become invaluable partners for deep space exploration. The question," Captain Martinez said diplomatically, "is what do we do with that partnership?" Maya had been listening to the exchanges while watching the alien ships transform around them. The bioluminescent patterns were growing brighter and more complex as the ships themselves recovered from their long dormancy. "Maybe the question isn't what we do with the partnership," she said. "Maybe it's what the partnership does with the galaxy." Wright looked up from his technical discussions. "What do you mean?" Maya gestured toward the view screen, where more alien ships were appearing as they dropped their camouflage, drawn by the signals from the wandering fleet. "Look. Word is already spreading. How many other species are out there, struggling with problems that we could solve? How many are dying from things we consider routine engineering challenges?" Vethara followed Maya's gaze. "The small, warm one speaks wisdom. The signals of our revival are being heard across this region of space. There will be others who come seeking to understand what has happened here." As if summoned by her words, the Churchill's sensors detected new arrivals. Ships of completely unfamiliar design dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, sleek vessels with crystalline hulls, massive constructs that looked like flying cities, and stranger craft that seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially elsewhere. "Captain," the communications officer called out, We're receiving signals from multiple species. They're requesting permission to approach. Kethtar moved to the communications station. These are peoples we have encountered in our wandering. Word travels fast among the Void Dwellers. They come to see if the stories of water creation are true. Captain Martinez looked around the bridge, suddenly realizing that humanity had stumbled into something far larger than a simple rescue mission. They're coming to meet us, aren't they? To meet the humans who can solve resource problems. More than that, Bethara said quietly. They come because for the first time, in ages, someone has solved a problem instead of simply accepting it as unsolvable. You have done something that changes how the galaxy thinks about impossibility. Dr. Okafor was practically vibrating with excitement. Captain, we're looking at first contact with multiple species simultaneously. The scientific implications alone are staggering. Wright was equally animated. The engineering exchanges could advance human technology by centuries. These species have adapted to environments and challenges we've never encountered. Maya smiled, remembering her conversation with Kethtar on the surface of New Terran. They're not just coming for our technology. They're coming for our approach. We don't accept that problems can't be solved. Over the following days, the dead solar system became an impromptu gathering point for what Maya realized was the first truly interstellar diplomatic conference in galactic history. Representatives from dozens of species arrived, drawn by stories of the humans who had solved the wandering fleet's centuries-old crisis in a matter of weeks. The diversity was staggering. Silicon-based crystalline beings who had been slowly dying as their home star cooled, found themselves in conversation with human geothermal engineers about artificial heat generation. Gaseous entities who existed in the upper atmospheres of gas giants discovered that humans had developed atmospheric processing techniques that could restore depleted atmospheric layers. Aquatic species whose homeworlds were slowly evaporating learned about human terraforming techniques for creating stable hydrospheres. Each species had arrived expecting to trade for specific resources or technologies. Instead, they found themselves in discussions about fundamental approaches to problem solving. The difference, Veth Ara explained to Maya, as they watched human technicians working alongside alien engineers to integrate water production systems into biomechanical ship designs, is that your people assume problems exist to be solved. Most species, when faced with scarcity or environmental change, adapt themselves to the new conditions. Humans adapt the conditions to meet their needs. Maya nodded, watching Wright enthusiastically explaining atmospheric water extraction to a group of aliens whose species had been nomadic for generations because their home atmosphere was too thin to support their civilization. We terraform instead of evolving. We engineer instead of adapting. And you share instead of hoarding, added Kethtar. Approaching them with what Maya had learned was a container of human-produced water that he now carried as a symbol of the new possibilities. Every species here has been offered not just solutions, but the knowledge to create those solutions themselves. The implications were staggering. Within weeks of the Churchill's arrival, the dead solar system had been transformed into a bustling hub of interspecies cooperation. Human water production technology was being integrated into alien environmental systems. Alien navigation and survival technologies were being adapted for human deep space exploration. Most importantly, the human approach to problem-solving was spreading throughout the gathering. Dr. Okafor approached Maya with her latest report. The medical exchanges alone are revolutionary. These species have adapted to environments that would kill humans. But they've never developed our regenerative medicine techniques. Meanwhile, their adaptive capabilities could solve dozens of human health challenges. Captain Martinez was coordinating with what had effectively become the first interstellar humanitarian organization. Ships from multiple species were being equipped with human resource production technology and departing to address crises throughout the region. Maya, Captain Martinez called out, I have a communication from Administrator Carson. She wants to know if you're ready to head up the first permanent interspecies cooperation station. Maya looked around at the bustling activity, aliens and humans working together, sharing knowledge, solving problems that had plagued entire civilizations for generations. I think, she said slowly, that humanity just found its place in the galaxy. Kethtar overheard and made his chiming laugh sound, Small Maya, I think your people have created their place in the galaxy. And that place is wherever problems exist that need solving. 3 months after a dying alien had pleaded for water in an ancient lake bed, Maya stood on the observation deck of humanity's first interstellar cooperation station, watching ships from dozens of species arrive and depart. Each carried human technology adapted to alien needs, alien knowledge adapted to human understanding, and most importantly, the growing conviction that no problem was truly unsolvable. The galaxy, it turned out, had been waiting for someone to prove that impossible was just another word for hasn't been tried yet. And humans, Maya reflected with deep satisfaction, were very good at trying things that had never been tried before. The water that had saved Kethtar's people continued to flow, but it had become something more than hydration. It had become proof that when humans encountered suffering, they didn't just offer sympathy, they offered solutions. And in a galaxy that had grown accustomed to accepting limitations, that made all the difference.